So, Dr. Rob, I
Tammy.
was just saying, hi. I was just telling the group that's on the webinar that this is Monday, April 15th, and on Wednesday, April 17th, Dr. Eddie Caparucci is going to do a 2-hour webinar. So it's a one-time kind of special, but we've had so many questions get stacked up that we're like, let's just do 2 hours. So that is a special time. So if you normally come to the Wednesday morning webinar series, join a half an hour early on
Tammy, can
Wednesday.
you, excuse me, tell them what, because everybody loves his work. I mean, seriously, if no one
Yes.
has heard who he is, and he's one of our most popular, of course, other than me and you, but can you tell folks exactly what he talks about? Because also a lot of recordings on the website from other things he's
Yes.
done.
Great idea. And I have some special information on that too. So Dr. Eddie Caparucci has done a podcast with Dr. Rob on sex, love, and addiction. And I will put that resource in the chat on going deeper. It's the inner child work. But on the webinar series, on the Wednesday morning webinar series, we have, for 4 weeks of every month, we have rotating hosts on the Wednesday morning series. That's 9:30 to 10:30 Pacific time. But Dr. Eddie's is getting to the other side. So his is typically very couples focused, for this particular webinar. So he has the going deeper, it's inner child. We talk about those things, but this particular one is pretty couples focused, in that, he's talking about betrayed partners as well as the person that's been
And what does it
struggling.
cost, Tammy?
Free, zero,
Right. Because a
zero.
lot of things we do give away. And yeah, and he's pretty wonderful. You want to get a sense of the work we do. I think you'll really enjoy Dr. Eddie. Also, my podcast, just to say it, is Sex, Love, and Addiction. And I have over 1 point, I don't know, I'm not going to say four
I
or
haven't
five,
checked. I think it's about 1.4 million, but I haven't checked in a while,
lots of
but it was really
downloads.
close to that before. So,
And
and
if you
then the
want to hear,
overcoming betrayal and addiction. Honestly, I
this is
was
this
shocked
one.
at yeah, I was shocked at how
Hmm.
many of those. So I'm actually adding to the chat right now where you can find that, but you can always find everything on our websites or email Tammy, Tami at seekingintegrity.com, and I'll point you towards resources.
And if you're
But
looking
there,
for the no cost resources, there's tons of them, and you just go below the fold of the homepage because some of the paid work is on the top. So, are you
yes.
ready to? We got
Well,
one
I have
question.
one more thing before we
Oh,
skip off
good.
of Dr. Eddie. He's given me the sneak preview of the new Inner Child book for betrayed partners. And I'm subbing
Wow.
in because one of our hosts for drop-in groups had to have some health, things taken care of. So I'm going to
Sure.
be bringing to the drop-in groups this week pieces of that particular book. I love the focus. Dr. Eddie and his wife Terry have shifted the focus of looking at the inner child for betrayed partners as well. So
Hmm.
I'm excited about that. But we always have lots of things happening. And one more thing before we get going, the betrayed partner work group, which is a low cost option. It starts again tomorrow with Angela Spearman. Those are 6-week courses, live facilitated. And they're really solid. It's, how to have healthy boundaries. Like, what is a healthy boundary? But it's very
What is a
practical
boundary?
information. And really useful for betrayed partners. It's good for people wherever they are in the journey. But she's had a number of comments, Angela, the facilitator, that people wish they had found this earlier. So it's one of those where I would encourage you to take a look at that. It's on the Seeking Integrity website under the work group tab, and there are more. I'll throw a link in about some of that. So,
Can
but
I just add one more
go ahead,
thing?
please. Mhm.
That, I just want all of you to know that we certainly put a lot of energy into addicts, and everyone's sort of always in treatment and in free things and, in seminars and weekends. The addicts get so much attention. And I think, Tammy, I want to give you credit for this, although I take some. We have done a really, really solid job of focusing on partners and betrayal and the loss and grief and relationships staying together. And I feel like we have given equal time to partners. And I don't always see that happening. In fact, I don't see that happening. And when we do treatment, we have a dedicated partners therapist. And I don't know a treatment center out there that, and just so you know, if someone comes to treatment, the partners have their own person. It has nothing to do with the guys. They are, I mean, they relate to the guys, but they are there for you. And so I'm just so grateful that we do put so much focus on partners, because this is a shared issue. Whatever I do is going to hurt and affect you. And so, so anyway, thank you for Tammy for putting so much partners
But
work together.
but before we leave that, I'm going to honor you because the prodependent lens. If you don't know what prodependence is, I gave you the link for podcast. Go listen, and he wrote books about that. But I still hear so many therapists and other treatment programs that are using codependent language. They're saying you're part of the problem. You are an enabler. You are codependent. You are whatever, rather than going, gosh, you really love somebody who's struggling, and how do we help you heal,
Right.
with that. It's like you're getting blamed for somebody else's behaviors. It makes zero sense. So I honor that you wrote both Prodependence Moving Beyond, or Beyond the Myth of Codependency, but also the clinical book that will help clinicians help people from a very different lens as well. And we do get lots of therapists who are going, hey, finally this book is here, and I never aligned with codependency, and so they're grateful, but unfortunately that's still out there way too often. So
Well, and I do want to say to those of you who are going to therapy or in therapy as partners, the minute they turn to, well, let's look at your part or what you did wrong or how you contributed to this problem or how your childhood issues are playing into, tell them thank you very much, but I don't take responsibility for this problem. There's nothing I could have done that caused that, which is true, by the way. And if the therapist is committed to codependency, I don't think they're going to help you in the way that you might need support when you're grieving a relationship that's been so important to you. So anyway, Tamu, got questions? We
we
should
do.
probably get going.
One more tiny little thing, because you said for relationships that want to stay together, we also have moving on alone for both betrayed partners, but we have a separate one for the guys as well, because not every relationship is able to be repaired, or people want them to be. So we have drop-in groups specifically for people who are leaving, have left, have been left, for both parties. So check those out if that's a fit for you as well. So, okay. This is for both the betrayed and the spouse. My husband may be autistic and ADHD. He's been masking his whole life, and addiction was the way he coped. I thought I married a person who had mental condition managed, but discovery is it revealed he didn't. Now, with potential of autism, I feel like there's even less space in the marriage for me. How does this impact relational healing and recovery work? I feel he has no capacity for a relationship. He is just trying to survive, and all he gives daily life and kids.
Well, I think this is an excellent question. I think we should tackle one of these at a time, maybe.
Yes.
So, because they're separate issues, and some
Yes.
people are ADDs, ADHD, some people are on the spectrum. So, a couple of things, and I could go in here while I'm talking to you, but Tam didn't like that. But if I went online and I looked up living with someone with ADHD, or couples who are dealing with ADHD, just to say it, or living with someone or loving someone with autism or on the spectrum, you will find, and I think for me, this is really important because I live with someone who has ADHD, and I'm telling you, and Tammy knows, I was ready to toss the relationship. It's like, why aren't you doing this? And you said you were going to, and why aren't you following through? And why are you leaving things all over the floor? And learning and understanding what we could do together to make it more manageable. And just one more thing, when my spouse lets me down about forgetting things or skipping things, or, before I started reading and learning about this, I thought, well, you don't love me if you don't understand how clean the house should be. You don't love me if you're sitting over here and the kids in the family are over there. And, it really is about understanding how their brains work and how you can take the pressure off of you and say, wow, this is about how can I best help our relationship by understanding how to better negotiate the two of us. So just to say it, and to go in there further, I'm going to breathe. I'm getting like you,
Yeah.
Tammy.
I was gonna say you're catching up with me.
I do think that part of the challenges with living with someone who's a sex addict and has co-occurring mental health issues is they're kind of hard to peel apart. And an addict, by the way, will love to duck under that. Well, what do you want me to do? I have ADD. I'm thinking about sex all the time. Or, I don't think about you because, so I do think the issues are separate. They need to be delineated. I think it's very easy for a partner to blame, for an addict to blame their mental health issues for what they do. That's not how it goes. I do think it's very important that people see a psychiatrist and they get appropriately evaluated. I will tell you that Tammy and I work with a professional who we both really like, who I think is just amazing. I've done a podcast with her. Her name is Candace Christensen, and Candace's focus is couples and individuals dealing with addiction and being on the spectrum. And I think I've asked her, could you sit in and just do a couple sessions for maybe 3 or 4 and help these people figure it out? Yes, I will. Um, so there are resources we have for working with you guys. I would not be afraid to look for books. This is the time to go into AI and chat GPT and say, what is this about? And how do we, all of that stuff. Um, I don't know that with the potential of autism, I don't know that there's less space for you in the relationship. My experience is there's going to be too much space. So, for example,
Mm.
I had a man I was working with who, was family dinner hour, and inevitably he didn't show up for dinner. And this is a minor example. He would do other things too. He would not show up for things that most people would say, "Oh, of course I'll join you." Or, I mean, he was at the point where he would literally, well, I don't get any details, but if he and his spouse were going somewhere, like they go in separate cars, like he'd get in his car and didn't think about. And the reason was, his spouse said, "You don't care about me. You don't regard me. You don't think about me." This wasn't just addiction. This was someone who, when they left that situation, their family, they just went on with their day and they weren't thinking about anything but what they were doing, and they weren't relational. And, I would think like, why are they at the computer all the time? Why aren't they with us? Or I thought they cared. Or so basically what I'm saying is I think if someone does have co-occurring mental health issues, you really need to understand them. How do they relate to addiction, if at all? How can we negotiate a better coupleship if these things are there? Just like if I was ill with diabetes, how would you negotiate each other caring about each other? So mental health is a disease, it's a disorder, so is addiction, and you need to learn how to work with it and understand the limitations of it and figure out how to make it better. So I don't feel like autism leaves too little space between you. I think it leaves too much, where your expectations are this and your hopes and dreams are that, and they're over there, and you just think, well, where the heck are they? And if it is autism, it may be that they'd like to be more engaged, but they don't even understand what that means. So the degree to which someone has a capacity for relationship is limited with autistic folks or people on the spectrum. And again, testing, evaluation. We've had clients come out of other treatment programs and their diagnosis was, and some pretty famous ones, well, this person's a love addict, they're a gambling addict, they have problems with food. But what they didn't say is this person has ADHD or this person is on the spectrum or the real underlying issues. So more evaluation you can do, the more insight you can get, the more understanding. It makes it easier to put addiction over here and figure out what the other things are over there. So how does it impact relational healing and recovery work? Depends on how much information you get, how much details you get. Once you really know what the thing is, it'll be really easy to say, well, I know a little about ADHD, and that has nothing to do with your going out after work and hitting on these people, So um, I want to say one more thing is when you love somebody, this is a tough one because I know when I signed the marriage papers, it was for better or worse in sickness and in health. And so how do you negotiate the fact that this person might have an emotional issue and you want to be supportive, but they're also doing things that are incredibly painful and it's not your job to support them. And I do think picking those things apart when someone is physically ill and emotionally ill, and you have to, or even an addict, and you think, well, I made a commitment to sickness and health and they're sick. So how do I, and I think Tammy would say boundaries and self-respect. So anyway, there's a lot in that question, but it's a very good question. Tammy, did you want to add anything?
Well, I do. I mean, we've treated clients like this in our residential
Hmm.
program. I mean, so it really is, unpacking things, but it doesn't give them a pass. I remember we had a client in our program at one point, and he was like, "Well, I have ADHD," and I was like, "Well, first of all, lots of our clients have co-occurring, and that's true across whatever addiction, a form addiction takes." I said, "Well, then it's like we don't get a pass. We just have to work harder at doing our recovery work. We have to come up with strategies that work for us to be successful with it. But it doesn't, we don't get, you're, you're so sick. And like Dr. Rob
Right.
said, it's easy to fall under the, oh, look, I'm blaming all of these things. It's the same. And it's similar anyway. People go, oh, he had, sexualized trauma when he was a
Right.
child. And you're going, yes, and he's still an addict now, and stopping those problematic behaviors, both can happen. Yes, that happened, and we can learn to live in recovery. So, but to Dr. Rob's point, getting the right diagnosis, having someone who understands addiction and those other aspects unfortunately, a lot of people or a lot of professionals don't. And so they're looking, like, oh, I'm an ADHD
Right.
specialist. They're not looking holistically. And you really do need, someone and if he's struggling with stopping the problematic behavior, we have an expert residential treatment program that could really help support both of you in all of this too. So
Right, Tammy, TAMI at Seeking Integrity, if you want some of those resources. I did want to say one more thing, which is one of the ways to work with someone on the spectrum is teach them. To literally
hmm
say when your spouse comes downstairs and they say this is what you're supposed to do, because
hmm
innately they will not know. But if you know, oh, okay, I'm supposed to go upstairs and join them for dinner because that will what will make them feel better, then you've learned that. And so even if
hmm
you can't fix the problem, you can help people to adapt to the problem.
yes.
Anyway, let's keep rolling. I knew
Okay,
it,
the
Tammy.
next
Now we
one,
got 12 questions and no
I
one
know,
had it in the beginning.
and that's
Let's
okay.
go.
You're going to love and hate this one. Hello, addict here. How would you respond to the PhD doctors who say sex addiction doesn't exist and it's a moral construct? It touches my shame. Have they met me? Sex and porn addiction exists. Thank you for all you do. Finish 90 and 90 and going strong. So like you and I both hear this, that the naysayers of there's
We
no
heard
such
it
thing.
yesterday. I heard
Yeah.
it yesterday.
Yeah.
Here from a therapist who went on my listserv and said, I don't know what to do because I've studied sex addiction and all these other therapists that I work with are telling me it doesn't exist and I don't know
Oh,
what to
wow.
do. And maybe I took the wrong courses. And so, first of all, there are always going to be naysayers about whatever you do. There are going to be people who say, oh, cancer treatment, well, go to Guatemala and take these pills and don't follow, what the doctors say. And there's always going to be someone with an opinion. Back in the day in AA, when people had depression or anxiety, and not that long ago, and still somewhat, someone will say, well, you're an alcoholic, you can't take depression medication. You're an alcoholic. So people have all kinds of opinions, even professionals. So here's what I'd say is that we have an international diagnosis that the World Health Organization has created. And a lot of therapists just think, oh, sex addiction, that's some kind of joke. Well, we don't in the United States have a formal diagnosis in the DSM, which is how we formalize diagnosis in the United States. But the rest of the world, literally the rest of the world, except for Canada, the US, and England, they use the ICD. And so, Tammy, I think you might have put in the chat
I
where you can
did.
find a link to it. And it says not only this exists, but here are the symptoms by each of them and how people were. So it absolutely does exist. And I've been doing this for 30 years. So for the first 15, when I was in the media and I answered, well, they would come and say, well, this is just a made up thing. And I had to answer what it was about and what it meant. Now, most people come to me and they say, oh, we know this is there. How do people get help? So to me, I would look at it as a lack of information. You said finish 99 and still going strong. So you know what? I don't care what people call it. What I care about is, are you getting the help you need and are you getting better? The one thing about addiction and the word I want to say is people think that's a label, it's prejudice. To me, being an addict is a gift because the idea that therapy is going to solve in 2 years a lifelong problem. I might get better, I might stop, but I'm going to struggle with this all my life. And so there's no place like a 12-step program where I can go now or 15 years from now and people will support me and they will listen to me and and I don't have to pay anything. So I think it's arrogant of therapists to say, oh, I can help you and you'll be better in 2 years or maybe come back to see me in a year. This is the gift of 12-step. You never have to pay and you can show up over and over again forever. So yeah, I would say bless you. I'm so glad you have beliefs and opinions, but this is working for me. Oh, and by the way, here's the reference to where all the research has been done and all that, which Tammy just sent you. So, Tammy, I know you've been asked a million times. Is there anything else you really
No,
want to add?
yeah, I agree. You know, and like you, it's a gift because otherwise I was just freaking crazy. Like I kept doing these
Right.
same problematic things, even though I kept having negative consequences.
Or a
So
bad
when,
person.
yes, yeah, oh yeah,
Hmm.
yes, all of that. So to go, oh, you're a typical female addict, and I was like, oh, like I'm not terminally unique and beyond hope. So that's good for me. So. Okay. I'm a betrayed partner. My husband and I started couples counseling with his Christian counselor who says my husband doesn't
God.
need to meet with them, doesn't need to meet with them individually for this phase. But just a few weeks ago, he was still acting out, sexually drinking, etc. I don't know why they're stopping his recovery work and when his sobriety is still so fresh. He's not sober yet. That's an add-on for me, and
Tammy's having
why
a
I'm the
feeling
only
about this.
one concerned about
Do you
this.
want to
You're
start,
not. I
Tammy?
am too. Advice on what I should do because I don't feel like I have much to say in all this. Yes, you do. Healthy boundaries. Okay. Okay. So the
Take a
betrayed
breath,
partner
Tammy.
online, I
We have
know, like
feelings
this
about this issue.
enrages
Hmm.
me. Like this just makes me like this is your the therapist gaslighting you too. Like and anyway, but I'm going to tell you here's some support resources. The betrayed partner work group that starts tomorrow. I put the link in the chat. Please join it. It's healthy boundaries. You'll have language for communicating. Your healthy boundaries are not punishment against your husband or his therapist, but it's about these are my needs. And if your husband is unable to step into that and meet those safely, then you'll have consequences. Debbie McCrae does a fantastic job, and I will put a link on the previously recorded webinars. This will be on there as well, but she talks about talking boundaries and health. I mean, there's lots of resources for you, but no, you do have a say. Like the partners who hold healthy boundaries have the space, and then the addict partner who is bumping up against that starts to go, wait, this isn't working. But I say all the time, no addict's going to change until the pain of change is less than the pain of staying the same. He has a therapist colluding with him of like, oh yeah, you're doing good. He's not even abstinent, let alone in recovery. So like,
Well, then you don't know what he's saying to this therapist. Oh, he could be saying, I'm sober and I'm doing great. And how
yeah.
would he know? I just want to jump on this because, like Tammy, I want to be more kind. It infuriates me too, because it's very important to me that people get the help that they need. If you have a certain kind of cancer and you're not seeing the right doctor, you're going to get sicker. Even if that doctor says, no, 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 do what I'm doing, that may not work for you. There is something called a PSAT, just like there are CSATs. There are also a certified pastoral counselors who are certified in the treatment of sex addiction. So what background does this person have in treating sex addiction? What is their training in treating sex addiction? How do their values and beliefs spiritually relate to this issue? I don't know if you know this, but you can interview therapists. And I know when I was doing the one-on-one work, I would always say to them, hey, come in for an evaluation. I won't charge you for that first session, and you can see if we get along in my method. I believe I am on your side, partner. I think you are being, at best, led in the wrong direction, and at worst, completely harmed. Everything I know about this work, and I'm talking about 30 years and 12 books. And I was commenting on Bill Clinton in the 90s, and I'm actually in Newsweek in 1998 talking about Bill Clinton. I've been doing this a long time. And I can tell you that no relationship or situation like this will heal until the addict is sober on all levels. You can't change your life and your relationship if you're drinking, if you're using, if you're still acting out sexually. There is no talking about trauma. There's no talking about relationship issues. There's no talking about, healing the couple when that person, you have to understand, you can come into therapy and talk about all these things and trauma and background. But every time you go out and you keep acting out, you're recreating shame. You're recreating trauma. You're traumatizing your relationship. You can't clearly look at who you are and what you need to change when you're doing all this other stuff that is a distraction. So I could not disagree more strongly. You get my 100% disagreement. And I know that my guess is I'm going to stop. Your gut feels like this isn't right. You came here for a reason. I don't know if your husband is here or not, but this is not accepted, healthy treatment that provides the kind of care that people need. It just is not. And I cannot say that strongly enough. And TAMI at seekingintegrity.com. Tammy and I have been doing this for many, many years together and apart. We really know good clinicians. We know good pastors and pastoral counselors. Write us a note. We will make sure that you get your needs met. But I would not accept this at all. So, Tammy, you want to continue?
I want to just add because PSAP, I only suggest those for spiritual aspects. Addiction is a mental health condition, and they are not trained unless they are also, a CSAT.
Right.
They are not trained to do this work. I mean, we just had an example of somebody who has co-occurring mental health issues. This is a mental health issue, so it stopped the problematic behavior, just like Dr. Rob said, and then address the underlying issues. So yeah. Please lean into the support resources for you. Okay,
And you
next one,
don't
Dr. Rob.
pray the addiction away. You take
No,
action.
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's move.
I'm a betrayed spouse. My husband hasn't watched porn in several months, but he is struggling with looking at women in public on TV, etc. He also struggles with showing empathy and holding space for my emotions. What online work group would you recommend he start with? He suffered from childhood, here we go, from childhood trauma. Sexual mother was SA and bad drug user. Dad was absent and drove truck over the road to avoid home. I sadly wonder if he's even capable of feeling empathy or love.
Tammy, I'm really going to ask you to answer that because you get this question all the time,
I do.
and you helped, make the groups happen technically.
Yes.
I wrote the material. So how can you help them?
So here's what I hear, and there may be more, but he hasn't watched porn in several months. That's abstinence. I don't hear he's gone to 90 12-step meetings in 90 days. He's working the steps, he's working. So if he has literally just stopped watching porn, that's just stopping the problematic behavior. But of course, he hasn't learned any skills. He's not doing the work to be able to learn those. So there's an online work group, Porn Addiction 101, that if he hasn't already done that, which again, you put a snippet in, so he could have, but that would be a really good starting place for him. He needs foundational, aspects of this. Empathy is a higher order. We talk about this in lots of other webinars. It's a higher order thing. You have to stop the problematic behavior, and then you can start to learn those. But there's a learning curve with all of that. But just like we were talking about earlier, going to, he had childhood trauma and all. Yeah, and he can learn to stop the problematic behavior and address the underlying issues so that he can learn to have empathy. He can show up. But I say this all the time to partners too. What does empathy look like? Because you're talking to like a kindergartner, on the empathy scale. What would it look like for you? Because you can have that conversation. It would look like empathy for me if you did this, and it's going to feel really awkward.
Mm-hmm.
But like Dr. Rob was saying, you can teach him what it is. Using, I mean, it's a nebulous term, empathy. Your girlfriends get it, we get it, but it's what does it look like for you from
Not
him?
all of you.
No. Well, but you know what I mean.
But it is more innate for women to build socially and build. Men tend to compete. We tend to one up each other. Women tend to affiliate in more community ways. It's more internally. It's more biological. It's more anyway. I want to quickly respond to this.
Please.
Number one, and I mean this is all respect. How do you know he hasn't watched porn in several months? Has he told you that? Because
Yeah.
I just started working with a guy who was like, oh yeah, I have a burner phone. I have one phone that my wife sees or my partners or family see, and I have this other phone they don't know anything about. So, I have this one, place where I can go online and, there are, what do you call anonymous? I think that's the word where I can pull a window out of Chrome that
Oh, yeah,
says
yeah.
this is incognito,
Yeah.
which means I can look at stuff and then it erases itself, and you don't know unless you're a computer expert, you can't find it. So sadly, I don't know if that's true. I also don't see anything about what he's doing. I hear that he's told you that he's not looking at porn. Well, that's good. I hope that's true. But is he going to support groups? Is he going to therapy? Is he online? It's not just enough to take a class. I do think sex addiction or porn addiction 101 would be a good place to
Mm-hmm.
start. I would ask you to buy a book that I wrote called Out of the Doghouse, a cheating man's guide to healing relationships, because I think it would help you to know what empathy and compassion looks like in these guys, and then you can throw it at him. We teach a course called Out of the Doghouse, but that is about empathy is a second level of development. First, I have to stop the behavior. What you all don't know is most of the addicts I work with hate themselves about what they're doing. They don't have any self-empathy. Not that you partners care, but underneath there, we hate ourselves for what we're doing. We have so much shame about it. So we have no empathy for ourselves. There's not a whole lot we can give to you. But the other thing, just to say it last of all, is stopping the behavior is a good start. It really is. And that doesn't mean I'm going to be more nurturing, more kind, more available. In fact, I might be more defensive and guarded because I don't know how to deal with our emotions and I don't know how. So I would not track how you're being treated in terms of is the person in recovery. I was a jerk for years, but well, maybe still. But don't answer that, Tammy. But I'm not acting out, and I stopped acting out, and then it took time to understand other people's feel. I was so used to pretending and hiding, and that actually being real and understanding what you were going through. My response is no, I didn't do that. I don't know what you're talking about. Why are you so upset? What's the big deal? My experience as an addict is anti-empathy. Um, the last thing I want to say is trauma. I'm sorry it happened. It's a terrible thing. I've had lots of sexual trauma in my history, but that does not excuse my acting out. And I know a whole bunch of addicts will say, oh, all these things happened, and my mom did this, and the truck driver did that, whatever, my bus driver. And, it's really hard to recover because I've got to work through the trauma. No, you have to stop the behavior first and get support building a foundation of healing for yourself. And then there is room to look at childhood trauma. You have to understand looking at trauma is anxiety producing. It's scary, it's hard, it's painful. And guess what addicts do when things are difficult emotionally? We run to addiction. So there has to be stability and a sense of, I'm not going to run over there to fix this, a foundation before that person is ready to look at the past. And honestly, I can say to someone, yeah, I understand why you're doing this. Look what happened to you. But I can show them a frame by frame history of their lives, and it's not going to help them to stop. They need specific care. That's why we do residential treatment. That's why he should take porn addiction 101. And there was something else. And again, I do not gauge, and I think there's too much of this in this room today. I do not gauge how someone's doing an addiction by how they treat me, about how they act, or what they've said. I gauge someone's recovery by, are they doing the things that we know help? Are they going to 12-step meetings? Do they have a sponsor? Are they in therapy with someone who's trained to do this? Are you welcome to come into their therapy and talk about your fears and concerns as someone who's what we call a collateral? You're not a closed door to you. There are many, many things that would make me feel reassured that someone is healing, but they're all involve actions. And if I saw those actions, I'd be say, well, I'm glad that they're doing the things. So you're right to ask which course, because that is, and the other guys in that course will kick his butt about, why aren't you doing this and why aren't you doing that? Because I have to. All right,
Mhm.
we got a lot of questions. Let's keep
Okay,
moving.
we do. Both partners are here and watching. D-Day was 9 months ago, and we were working hard on recovery for both of us from my husband's 25-year secret porn and masturbation addiction. The most recent discovery is that there is a mother enmeshment in my husband's past. We are working on reparenting his inner child. He has a very limited memory of his childhood, doesn't even remember having birthday parties, etc. We are starting to think that there was probably a lot of emotional abuse in the family of origin, and memory loss is possibly self-protection. We would love your thoughts, suggestions, additional information on this. We are both in our own individual therapy.
So, Tammy, I'm not sure. I mean, I can respond to the general idea of this, but is there a specific question that's being asked? Can
Yeah,
you help with that?
yeah. Like, so it's uh, we, so is memory loss part of self-protection? And I like, can you compartmentalize that much so you don't remember things, that
Well,
happened in childhood?
so let's go back to the most recent discovery.
Hmm.
Maternal enmeshment is 95% of the men I work with, or paternal enmeshment, where that child's performance for their parent is what made that parent feel better, making that child special, kind of turning it into a friend or a boyfriend, or instead of meeting that child's needs for them, is 90% of my cases. And so childhood, and by the way, enmeshment can, it's a form of incest. It's covert. It is not overt, meaning you didn't touch me necessarily, but you treated me in a sexualized, romanticized way, and that is going to carry through in my relationships for the rest of my life. So, um, and I can tell you there are things I don't remember. There are things I don't want to remember. I do think that is, as Tammy said, self-protection, which is, I'm not ready to look at the past. As a therapist, I don't say, let's talk about what happened to you then, until I make sure you're really stable, you're really in a good place. I ask permission. Do you want to talk about this? So, and also, if someone is, D-Day was 9 months ago.
9 months, yeah.
It can take a year or two before I'm ready to deal with those issues. And I do think you also need the right therapist for. And there are a lot of people who do sex addiction work and trauma, but if they're good at what they're doing, they understand the order in which things can be done and the best way to carry them out, so that person doesn't end up acting out all over again because of the trauma work. Um, I do see a lot of we, though. We are working on reparenting his child, and we are starting to think there's a lot of emotional abuse. We would love your thoughts. And I know you're here as a couple, but I'm wondering, Tammy, if you have a response to all of those we's, because it seems to me there might need to be, especially if it's so recent, more I. And let me just say it this way: as a spouse and a partner, I respect, sicker and in health, sickness and health, better or worse. But I don't hear a lot of, and what I'm doing for me, or how I feel about this, or as he goes through this, you part of this work, maternal enmeshment. Well, guess what happens with you couples? You get enmeshed. And so part of the work really is, and we are saying this earlier, I need to work on me. Tammy knows as well, the partners need to find their own lives, their own boundaries, their own joy. So there isn't so much focus on us because we are unstable. And also, I hear a lot of you're taking on his problems. And, I don't think you are a couple and you're sharing this, but I think, and you've identified, and that's great, but this is something that he really needs to work on his own. And it's up to him and his therapist. And I think that as much as you might love or care, this isn't a medical issue. And yeah, so I want to hear from you as a spouse. So I'm taking courses. I'm learning about this. I'm looking at my own history and see if there's any trauma. Tammy, can you speak to that? Because all the we's, I'm sure you have a comment about that real quick.
And real quick, but yes, and there's lots of resources for mother enmeshment. And as Dr. Rob said, many of the guys that come to our residential program are that. But yes, I don't hear I'm getting help for my betrayal trauma because his issues are, have caused me all of this pain with all of this stuff, um, and I don't hear what he's doing separately to work on, doing his inner child. Yes, we learn to reparent ourselves, but like I need to reparent myself. Dr. Rob needs to reparent himself. I'm not going to reparent him, So I would really love to hear what you guys are doing individually. And remember, 9 months is very early in the process. You're talking 25 plus years of, a secret addiction, and the enmeshment things. You got to quit. Don't touch buttons.
So I put in a link. I don't know if you can all
I
find that
know,
or
but
not.
you hit return and now it's okay. But yeah,
So there is a professional that we work with who has really, this is his area of expertise. Again, if someone isn't sober and they're not working on themselves, and that isn't the time to look at trauma, but I've put in the chat and you can look up Dr. Ken Adams. And if you do
yes.
reach out to Dr. Adams, please let him know that we referred you because I think there's a better chance of you getting in more quickly. But
I
maternal
talked to him
enmeshment,
today.
books to read about. Married to Mom is one of his books. And this is an arena where a specialty work, I think, and he's really the leader in that work. We just know that we see it all the time.
Yes. Okay, so next question. Betrayed partner. D-Day was a month ago. Ooh, I can't stop searching through his phone and it's becoming an obsession. I get sick and shaky every time I do it, but I feel like there's more to find. How can I combat this? This isn't my normal behavior. I just talked to somebody today and I loved, and it was like this early in the process. And she told him, don't tell me. You don't need to keep traumatizing myself. And I was so proud of her for holding a healthy boundary for you. So if you find more, is it going to help you? You know it's bad, and you're making your actions of looking in his phone are causing you physical sickness, like that. We can't control anybody else, we can control ourselves. And I have used, because one of my meditations a while back was, if I stand in the middle of a hula hoop, um, I have control over everything inside the hula hoop. So I can choose whether I pick up his phone or not. I can choose whether I'm going to traumatize myself by wondering, what's going on. Are you safety seeking? Absolutely. I can't express enough how valuable the betrayed partner work group that starts tomorrow would be for you, because healthy boundaries would be, I'm reaching out to my friend who's my support person. I want to look at his phone, but I'm calling you first. That's my commitment to me, inner boundary. I'm committing to you that I'm going to reach out to you so you can talk me off the ledge, and so that I don't have to do that. That's so hurtful to me. It's not hurting him. This is hurting you, and you don't need to keep getting hurt. It's bad enough as it is. So, Dr. Rob.
I always think about it, and I know this is I always used to remember being a kid, if I had a bruise on my arm, I would push at it to see how much it hurt, and that's sort of what I feel like you're doing is you're kind of, how much does this hurt? How bad is this? And By the way, I just want to go, and that's not helping you. It makes you feel bad about yourself. It makes you feel, and you're afraid whether you see something or not, so you're obsessing about it. What you're looking for is comfort and support and to feel solid inside about what's going on. I don't think that he or this set of circumstances are going to do that for you. And boy, can I not tell you enough, whatever support group, whether it's one of our free support groups or the betrayal, you need I believe, if you're a woman, you need other women around. They will answer these questions. There'll be women in those groups who have said, oh my God, I used to do that. Here's what I'm doing now. There'll be women who say, I didn't do any D-Day. By the way, D-Day is disclosure, meaning you worked with a therapist to find a trained therapist to understand what's been going on during the course of your relationship. So this partner has just gotten a complete inventory of everything that their spouse has ever done. And I understand completely why you would want to, as Tammy said, this is self, what did you use the word?
Safety seeking it, yeah, and I get
Safety
it.
seeking.
Yeah.
And partners say, well, if I just know this and I just know that, the truth is, and we sit as addicts and like, okay, they said if they just know this, we'll tell them, or we're, but you're not looking, it's not like the next thing or the next thing is really going to make you feel better. Um, uh, uh, Sorry, what makes you feel better is learning how to take care of yourself in some way that takes all the focus off of your addict. And these are, what else do I want to say? So I don't think you should combat it. I think you should accept the fact that this is where I am and this is what's going on with me. And rather than combating it, I think you get support, learn more about it. I don't think you should hide or keep a secret what you're doing. If you're going to go through his phone, you need to tell him. You can need to ask him for his phone. You don't want to end up keeping secrets and lying and not being who you want to be, because you're safety seeking. So there's a lot. I also wonder, are you in therapy? Do you have support? How are you learning about this? But Tammy's right. The Betrayed Partners work group tomorrow. Join the group, take the course, and listen to other women who have been through this, and you'll be thankful, I promise.
Yes. And I
Okay.
put the direct link for the part 1 that starts tomorrow in the chat. Okay. The next question, betrayed here. And this is will I ever be able to let my guard down and fully trust him again?
Well, those are two different things. Those are different things. So I have a story about this. And Tammy, I know we have a lot of people who have questions, but I'm going to tell you
Yeah.
this
No.
story. So if I worked somewhere and I was the boss, and I walked in one morning and my employee was in the safe and I knew they shouldn't be in there and they were pulling out the petty cash, we'd have a conversation. And it may well be that in my empathy and compassion, doing what I do, I might say, you know what? And he or she might say, I need the money, my kids, blah, blah, blah. I might say, okay, if we should come to me and said, I'm struggling, but nonetheless, you get one pass at this and one only, then I call the police. Then you're fired or whatever that is, but I'll give you one pass. So 3 years later, I come in early and I see this employee at the safe counting money or whatever. It doesn't matter how good the employee they have been. It doesn't matter whether they have done anything like this or they're even doing it right then. What do you think is the first thing that's going to go through my head about what they're doing there? So there's a sense of trust that is lost. I will never be able to think of them as someone who couldn't or wouldn't do this. So, but that doesn't mean every day I'm seeing them, I'm thinking, are they in the safe? Are they in the safe? Meaning full trust? No, that naive sense that someone go out there and would never hurt me or never deliberately hurt me or never hurt me knowing what would hurt me, that's gone. You'll never be able to see that person walk out the door and have a little bit of worry about what's going to go on. They're coming home late. They forget, you're going to have clues and that's going to trigger you. You maybe triggers go reduce, but over time they will. But in the beginning, it's going to be really hard for you to let your guard down. And again, trust someone again, maybe over time, but there's always going to be that feeling when they come to home 2 hours late. I wonder if they're at it again. You can't unknow what you know. Do you want to add something real quick to that, Tammy? I know we
No,
have so many
I think
questions.
that was well covered. And so the next one is
Thank
from
you.
the betrayed partner. And it says 3 years ago, or 3 years into recovery, which I'm kind of, anyway,
Okay.
yeah. No emotional safety. So I'm before I even read this, like people use the term recovery. Recovery is this is integrated into my life. Abstinence is just not acting out. It's not doing the problematic behaviors. And people keep going like, I'm 3 weeks into recovery. No, you are not acting out. And this is a journey. It usually takes 2 to 5 years if you're doing what you need to
Ooh.
do. So after that, I'm going to now read the question, but like it's frustrating because everybody goes, oh, I stopped doing the problematic behaviors. Now I'm in recovery. No, that's the work of the journey. Okay. 3 years into recovery, no emotional safety, and I lost myself a couple weeks ago. This is from the partner. I became violent and punched him several times, then smashed his car window. I don't condone what I did, but he called my adult son and told him. Now, both my two adult kids need a break from me because of how I acted. They know the details of what their dad did. Now their mom has become violent and they had enough. I'm deeply hurt by being told my kids need a break from me. How do I handle this?
Well, a couple of things. I do want to remind you that you could be arrested for that. And they arrest women just as much as they arrest men for hitting a spouse, breaking and screaming and smashing. If he wanted to, he could have called the police and said, my wife is out of control and you need to take her away, and they would. So regardless of the spiritual, moral, ethical, and relational issues that this brings up, it is never okay to hit. It is never okay to break things and scream at someone and make them afraid of you, no matter what role you're taking. And I do think that you do need, obviously, you need some support to maintain your sense of self. And by the way, no one feels worse about this than you. I guarantee it. Nobody feels more ashamed, more embarrassed. I am upset though. I feel like your husband or partner or whatever it is co-opting your children. It is not their job to say, well, the solution to this is that you shouldn't talk to your mother. You may need your kids around more than you ever did, just to be able to connect with them and feel better about yourself and have some fun together. So I don't think that it is, and especially these aren't even his kids. These are my adult
No,
kids.
they
Oh, they
no,
are your
but he
kids.
says no, unfortunately the kids also know what dad did. So they got squished in the middle of all of this hot mess.
Right. So I don't. There are many things that come to mind, but I absolutely think that the two of you need to sit down in couples therapy and learn these crises are going to come up. How are we going to deal with them? What do we need to do? It's like telling someone with mental illness, when you do this, I want you to do that. You need direction and support for being able to know what to do with these feelings and how to manage these feelings. I wonder what happened that made you lose it. I also think, I don't know what no emotional safety means, Tammy, but I'm assuming, look, when you go to these partners groups, whether they're paid or unpaid, what happens is you get someone's phone number, you get their email address, you can text them that, you say, I'm in trouble and I just want to smash windows and hit, but you can step out of the room and call them. That's what therapists are for. So maybe there are actions that you can take to manage, maybe you need to see a psychiatrist and look at your anxiety or emotionality. I don't know. But if you don't want, but now you're acting out. Now you're the one who feels bad. Now you're the one that he can point to, or your kids, and say, well, you're the one who's doing all this stuff. Your addict might even be able to say, well, can you see how she's been for years? So this is a cover for an addict to blame you. And what I appreciate is you are taking responsibility. You are saying, I lost myself. I don't want to be this person. Um, and I guess I'm going to say this really quickly. I do think that you're finding safety and working on stability within yourself is more important than talking to your kids. Right now, there are primary and secondary issues. The primary issue in my mind is you don't get arrested, that you don't hate yourself for what you're doing, and that you find people to support you. That's the primary issue. So you don't do this again. What's going on with your kids and what your husband did or didn't do with them is a secondary issue that you can clean up later. But right now, you need to take care of yourself. Yeah.
And what I don't hear with either of you is, you talk about recovery, but I don't hear any recovery work. I don't hear we've had guys that have come to treatment who have stopped the problematic behavior, even years, but they still don't have a clue how to live, a life of recovery. So you stopping the problematic behavior is the top layer, addressing the underlying issues so that we can learn and grow and be in recovery. But I also don't hear like I'm going to the drop-in groups every week. I'm on We Tonglen. I've done the betrayed partner, work group. I don't hear what you're doing, to take it's the pressure cooker. Like to vent the pressure cooker. You would have tools to use to go, just like Dr. Rob said. I would have somebody to call. I would go, oh, I am escalating. I need to go for a walk, and put mittens on so I can't hit anything, whatever it is that you need to do so that you're
Well,
taking
and
care
anger
of you.
management.
Yeah, anger man. Yeah, but like we talk on lots of the webinars, you can feel it in your body if you're paying attention. You can feel when those things are happening, and you can choose. There's a moment before the rock comes crashing down the hill where you can go, right now I need a timeout and I need to step away and go do some self-care. Okay, I'm breathing exercises, whatever it is, but violence on either side of the equation, is it's never okay. It's not safe. And
And
so,
I do hear partners, I just went from the other end, putting up with things like screaming, slamming doors, breaking things, calling you names. That is never acceptable. Never, never, never. And you're not just dealing with an addict, you're dealing with someone who's out of control in a whole bunch of ways. Okay.
okay, I'm the betrayed partner. My husband has been in recovery since D-Day, August of 2023. So he's got some sobriety.
6, 7, well, 8,
Yeah,
10 months, right?
yeah. I would say he's in sobriety. He's working with a CSAT and attending SAA meetings. I've seen a lot of positive changes during this time, but he disclosed the details of his PA in August when he was in a different place that I don't trust. We can't afford a second CSAT to do a formal disclosure. Only way his CSAT will do it. How do we go about addressing this ourselves and discussing his acting out behaviors without a formal disclosure?
Well, I think not everyone, first of all, there are people who can't afford therapy at all. And one of the reasons that Tammy and I decided to do all this stuff for free and seeking integrity is because we realize that 90% of you will never be able to afford therapy or treatment or 12-step programs or residential. Some of you will, but most of you won't walk into a therapist's office. So the fact that he can actually go see a professional who is trained in this, I think is a gift to your relationship. But I am concerned, and Tammy, I want to toss this one to you. I understand that we're trained in a certain way, but it can't be rigid. It can't be, there are ways to find safety around doing this that don't necessarily, I know I did this for years without having two people involved. What I think is important is what kind of support do you have? Where do you go when this comes out? What kind of help do you have? And Tammy, I want to address I have not had this question come up. So can you help with he or she won't do it because
Yeah, no, I honestly, unfortunately, hear this, yeah, and it is challenging. So, a couple of things. I guess I'm wondering, what is the goal of a second formal therapeutic disclosure? Because, wait, we're working with CSAT and Tenny. I've seen a lot of positive, and he disclosed the details of his in August. Okay, when we were in a different place. Okay, so you have the details. What Matt Wheeler just talked about this on the webinar from last week. Like, do you need another formal therapeutic disclosure? What is your goal and intention with it? I think I would start with that and see. The details. He's moving forward. He's doing things that is showing you that he's doing things in a different place. If there is something that, like, you really need to know, it's about your health, it's your best girlfriend, it's whatever, like there was something that he left out, that would be something different. But Matt Wheeler talks specifically about not everybody needs a formal therapeutic disclosure. You've already had one, it was bad, and you see him doing work to do something different. So is that something that is really that important to you, or can you accept that you're moving forward in a different way? I think that's where I would start with all of that. There are some books to do therapeutic disclosures. I'm not a super fan of doing it on your own, but you've already been through this once. So I think I'd be more, what is the intention of doing this? If it was, I wasn't hearing it at the time, you did hear it, and you may have the document yet. I don't know. So
I do want to quickly
it's a little
say that
perplexing. Yeah.
In terms of free stuff, I train therapists every week, and we get 25 or 30 therapists who show up to talk to us in a group, and I'm one of the members about issues like this. I'm a therapist, and this person wants this, and if you want to give that information to the therapist and say, I have some questions. I talked to Dr. Weiss. He suggested you stop in the consult group and ask this of a bunch of people. I'm sure that we can help this person find their way to asking this question with a bunch of other experts. Because I don't think there's much you can say to convince or change, but I think other professionals can. He can reach out to me. I do discussions with therapists. I'm glad to be able to spend a few minutes with him or her. Tammy at seekingintegrity.com. She'll help support this person or you.
Yeah. 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 It's a good question. Okay, betray partner here of a PA. Everyone always says the porn and acting out has nothing to do with you or your looks, etc. I find it extremely hard to understand that. It's something I struggle with, especially because the acting out escalated right after giving birth to our child. How do you suggest understanding that has nothing to do with us or how we look, or just how to not feel like we aren't enough?
I want to say very quickly, if I was married to someone who drank or gambled or did something that was extremely addictive and harmful, I wouldn't be saying necessarily, what does that have to do with my body? Or what does it have to do with the way that I look? Or what does this have to? I would realize that this person has a problem, and no matter what I do, whether I'm kind or not, or supportive or not, or look perfect, that they have this problem, and they probably had it before we met. Now, I, as an addict, will say, oh, well, if you were just thinner or just that or this, because it makes me easier to act out. And you will take that, you will take it in. There's one thing really important here that I want to say. I don't think you understand what the birth of a child does to us addicts. It isn't about how you look. It's about the terror of being a father. It's about our absolute fear that we won't get as much of your attention. Everything's going to be focused on this child. We may want to have a child and we're excited about it, but a part of us wants constant attention, constant validation. So I don't think we hear that a lot, unfortunately, that men have acted out on their anniversary, they've acted out on their birthday, they've acted out, when the focus is taken away from them, from us, especially long term. So I want you to hear that it's very frequent, not very, but it's not unusual for me to hear that someone acted out of the birth of their first child. What I'm sad about, and I wish you could find a different way of looking at it, is it's not about you're giving birth and you're not having the perfect body. It's about him not being able to do his job, which is to protect and support the family. So, yeah, and again, betrayed partners group, support group, you will walk into rooms full of women who've been told and feel that they're not good enough. And I can tell you, and I'll just say this, Tammy knows a little bit about this. At one point, I saw for treatment one of the most beautiful women in the world, and I'm serious, like movies. I remember I saw her for treatment, and her face went by on a bus, and it was kind of weird, but truly one of the most beautiful, acknowledged as one of the most beautiful women on earth. She was being betrayed, and her husband was a sex addict, and I thought, and she was doubting herself. And she was saying, I'm not this. And I thought, don't you realize the whole world looks at you as being one of those beautiful women on earth? It didn't matter. Her self-esteem, her sense of herself, and whatever he was saying to her destroyed her. And so I've seen it. It doesn't matter how you look. It isn't about you in that way. It's about his brokenness. Yeah. So don't take that in. It's not about you.
And it's hard to not take that in. I mean, like that,
Of course.
it is so hard. But Scott Brassard, who does the sex addiction, porn addiction 101 online courses, he'll ask the guys, and this happens at treatment too, is, is your affair partner, prettier than your wife? No. Is smarter than your wife? No. Funnier than your wife? No. I mean, none of those things. It isn't about any of that, but it is really hard to not compare but you have kiddos, take care of you and your kiddos. That's
And
focus
I
on
want to
that.
say, especially with porn, because you're seeing those images, or you could never look like that. That person doesn't really look at it. You could never have things that are that big or that small, or because those people are actors and actresses, and their whole life is about looking that way. But this person is looking at them that you love, and you're thinking, well, I'm supposed to look like that. And you could leave, and they would still do this. It isn't. It truly isn't about you.
Yeah.
Um, Remorse, by the way, when you're in grief, is all about a process saying, what did I do wrong? And just because you are grieving the reality of this relationship, but turning it on yourself is not going to help. Okay, we've got
Okay.
one
So
more, and then I got to walk my
okay.
dog.
Okay, I'm struggling with figuring out if my partner is a SA or PA. He chats online, but he says he's never met the people. What makes a difference, or what difference does it make? He has had physical affairs before, and the addiction has just escalated.
Okay, he's lying, would be my guess. He's
Hmm.
saying, I would guess, number one, he's saying this is the least thing, you're afraid of that. So I'll tell you the least thing that would be the least problematic is my looking at porn. Because what's happened is I'm flirting with people, I have stuff going on, I'm either in those affairs and I don't want to tell you about that, but I give you this little piece that I have a problem with porn and you'll leave me alone. He's chatting online. By the way, I don't believe he's not meeting people. How would you know? So I don't think the issue is what group he goes to, or this person has, by the way, if he's been having physical affairs, he's a sex addict. So porn is not the issue. It's part of the issue, but it's sex and relationship problems in general. So my answer is go to SA 101, for him to take that work group and focus on the whole issue. And I wouldn't, are you getting STD tested? Are you taking care of
That's what I was
yourself?
thinking. Yeah, please
Go
get
ahead,
STD
Tammy.
tested. No, I was going to say, please get STD tested. I can't tell you how many people have come to treatment. The guys come to treatment, and their spouse is thinking that it was all porn and it was all online, and then they have to call and say that they have an STD. You need to go get tested. So whatever the lips are saying, this is part of a healthy boundary in a physical way for you. Please go get STD tested and let them know that you're going to go get STD tested. That would be, and yeah, that would be important.
And I want to say one more thing. If you're struggling, you need help. If you're struggling, you need support. If you're sitting there saying, well, is he doing this or is he doing that? Or, is it physical or is it porn? Then you are driving yourself crazy. It's like the person who's going through everything on someone's phone. You're not helping you. If you get answers to it's this or it's that, you're not going to feel better and you're not going to have the support you need. So get what you need to be able to face all of this, and it'll probably become better in the process. You want to take one
Yeah.
more, Cami?
Um,
Um,
okay, let's see. I'm trying to find, because these are, okay, so the last one, how can I work on developing healthy intimacy and self-image after living through 16 years of my husband's sex and porn addiction, 1 year since official D-Day. But my husband, and that's D-Day, and these is usually Discovery Day, but my husband had a porn and sex addiction our entire marriage. I feel uncomfortable with him touching me, and I cannot even look at my own body the same way again. This roadblock is causing a dead bedroom, which I feel safest with, but worry my husband will find his way back to other women or porn entirely.
so I think the question is premature in terms of healthy intimacy and sexuality, and if you don't feel safe and comfortable with your own body, it's not a good time to be sexual. And how alive was your bedroom when this person was acting out and lying to you and doing things behind your back? It may have seemed more alive to you, but 16 years of acting out, and trust me, I was not someone that you would feel safe with or with whom the bedroom would be alive. So I wonder how much he's disclosed. I wonder how much amends he's make. I still don't hear what you're doing for your support. And by the way, trust your gut. You don't feel comfortable with him touching you, don't. You have a dead bedroom because you don't feel safe, don't. I have a very familiar statement, which is if you don't trust someone, why would you have sex with him? And I don't hear that you feel safe or trusting or hopeful. By the way, it's only been a year, right, Tammy? 9 months, a year. That is not very long. Now we as addicts, and if we're men, want to say, well, it's been 3 months. How come you won't have sex with me? Everything isn't better. It might take you more than a year to feel safe and feel like there's a healthy place for this partner. I do want to say, by the way, we're talking a lot about men and women. There are homosexual relationships like this. There are female sex addicts, but 90% of the folks who come in are people who are married to a heterosexual person and want to save their relationship or figure it out. Tammy, I feel like we've hit it today.
Yes, we
Um,
did. So
Thank
Dr.
you
Rob
so
will be back in
much.
2 weeks. Aaron will be back next week. So join
Yeah.
us when you can. But again, Dr. Eddie's 2 hour special edition that will be this Wednesday. So thanks, Dr. Rob. Thanks everybody for the great
Bye. Have a good
questions.
evening.
Bye.